Hi guys, it's Sophie. So I'm going to be making a different video today, no bookish video today, because I really wanted to talk to you guys about DBT. So I'm going to explain a little bit just in the background first, so if you don't know what I'm talking about, hopefully you do. So I have something called borderline personality disorder. It's been re-tagged recently, to my great chagrin, as emotionally unstable personality disorder. It's one of the most common personality disorders, and it's normally considered to be a lifelong condition, but one that can be managed. And in terms of like symptoms, I'm not going to go through like absolutely everything, but I think the most marked thing is like your emotions change a lot and they're very intense, and it can be to the point of overwhelm. So it's not kind of like a normal neurotypical person's emotional response or reaction. It's different to that, and that's one of the key markers, and that's why they've changed the name. But it just makes it just such a horrible thing. I can't imagine having to date someone and tell them that. So I've had that sort of forever, kind of. I think really I was getting towards being more unwell when I was about 13. And I'm 26 now, so 13 years ago. And I've been not very well with this for a while. Some of you might remember the time back on the channel I had to be an inpatient nurse, so I kept it ward for a period in 2017, so that was a little while back, but if you've been around since then, you might remember that little break I had then. And I've had to be admitted sort of earlier in my life as well. And it's just been a bit of a struggle really. I think it's fair to say that pretty much every day with BPD was like some challenge. It doesn't mean you don't have good days, but it just meant there was always something, if that makes sense. It's one of those things that it is really something that affects you every day, and even in small ways. And now, just talking about me a little bit as well before we get into the DBT, but I'd had lots and lots of different kinds of therapies throughout that period. So because I wasn't very well, and because I was self-harming, and because I had suicide attempts, I was kind of noticed quite early that I wasn't doing very well. So I had lots and lots of CBT. And I don't want to knock CBT at all, because I know that for a lot of people it's really, really helpful. But I really didn't find it helpful at all for managing my symptoms. And I kind of did it and tried it, but it never really had much of an effect on how I felt day to day. And that's not to say it's not the same for other people. But CBT isn't really what they recommend to treat what I have anyway. It was kind of, this is what's available, so let's give it a go. And I did some more like deep dive psychological therapies as well. And I think they were slightly more helpful in understanding myself, but they still didn't get to like the root of helping me day to day like feel better and feel less unwell. I also had EMDR. Now that was slightly different because I had or have had PTSD too, and the EMDR was something that specifically is targeted to treat post-traumatic stress disorder. And I found that really helpful, and that was a big step for me in getting a lot more control back over my life, reducing the flashbacks, reducing the like panic attacks and nightmares, all of those things to do with PTSD, and that helped a lot in managing the other stuff that was going on, my emotions and the symptoms of the BPD, because they weren't kind of bouncing off one another. But I never really had anything that felt like it really worked, and I don't think that's the detriment of any of the therapies. I just don't think they are the right tool for the job. And after my last admission in 2017, they kind of realised like she's still not doing great, and I was allocated with a care coordinator. So for those of you who don't know what a care coordinator is, if you haven't known anyone who's been sort of more severely unwell with mental illness, because it tends to be something you get when your condition's quite complex or quite long lasting, a care coordinator is basically a little angel in human form who sorts out to make sure all of your care is joined up, so your GP knows what's going on and they don't make you tell them your whole life story, like warts and all, every time you see them, and that your psychiatrist knows what medications work well for you, and you can liaise through them to get your meds changed, and your therapy team or teams know and share that information, and your crisis team, who are people who come in after you've not been well to look after you at home. So it's connecting up all of those different people who otherwise the patient is kind of responsible for bringing their history and explaining themselves every time they go. They're also like an advocate for you. So they know your story and they know you as a person, and they want you to get better. And sometimes in healthcare when things don't go so well, patients can be passed off like problems. sort of will transfer this person to this, not in a bad way, will transfer them to talking therapies, let's say, and then the GPs won't really worry about it as much because they've done their bit. And I think the reason why care coordinators are so helpful for people with things like BPD or bipolar disorder is quite often doctors don't really want to have to hold on to that and will push it off because it can be complicated and unrewarding because we don't get better very quick. And just some frustrations. I won't go into it too much detail, but there's huge amount of discrimination against people with BPD in healthcare staff. There's been a number of studies that find, I think it was like 30% of nurses, 36% of mental health nurses wouldn't want to work with someone who has BPD. So there's all of those things going on, and your care coordinator is the person who gets to stand up and kind of shout from the rooftops like, no, we're going to help this person get better. So I was allocated my first ever care coordinator back in 2017. And she got me on the DBT, which is what I want to have a chat about today, as well as just a little bit of, the bit I've done so far about explaining why I think DBT is so helpful. So DBT is dialectical behavioural therapy, and it is something that was specifically designed with what I have in mind. And I would also say, in 2017, when I was told, look, you can go on this course, that was the first time I'd ever heard anyone say, this will get better. And that's not like, I don't want to underemphasise that. Before that point, I've been told by my healthcare professionals that this was just something I had to live with, and I didn't know that there was treatment that could make me back to a state where I wouldn't have to be thinking about it every day. And it was just amazing when Mum rang me, because she was the one who actually found out from one of her colleagues, and we were just so excited and ready for this. And it was really hard. So DBT is basically a skills-based therapy. So rather than like talking about your past or even talking about like things that have just happened to you in a bad way, so being like, I didn't feel very well and I did this, DBT is just about like skills. So the way that lots of people in my group, because it's a group therapy, thought about it was, these are things we should have learned at some stage, and something in our lives got in the way and meant we didn't learn these skills. Or for some people, they learnt some of them and something really drastic happened and they unlearned them. And these are skills that most people who don't have BPD have. And it's simple things like, before I went into my group therapy, I didn't know that you could feel sad and decide, I don't want to feel this sad, and do something to change the sadness. And I know that sounds really silly because everyone else I've talked to who doesn't have BPD is like, yeah, of course, like you can mitigate your sadness, you can do things to make you less sad. But until I'd gone through this course, if I was sad and I was like bottom of the pit sad, I was that, and there was nothing I could do, no impact I could have to make myself feel any better or different, or make it last less time. So there's skills that help you do things like that. There's skills that help you be aware of and regulate your own emotions. I'm someone who, my emotional responses for a number of different emotions were really blunted when I came into DBT. Anger was something that I had very rarely expressed in the whole of my life that I can remember. And it was something that when I went in, I didn't think I actually had. I thought that anger was something other people had. Because the way that I'd responded to that and the way that I felt about that internally, not a conscious thing, was it wasn't a safe thing to feel, and my body had cut me away from that emotion. So whereas when most people would feel angry, I would kind of go away and I wouldn't feel any of the kind of heat or the rising or the like desire to break things or hurt people or any of the like normal things, and that is the normal things that people feel when they get angry. You don't do the things you feel, but that's normally what you'd feel. So there was a lot about exploring that, and lots of people had similar experiences. It might not have been anger, it might have been sadness or fear, but emotions that we just didn't have access to because they weren't safe enough. We were too worried about the impact of them. So learning about what those emotions are and how they can serve you and how to use them in a positive way, and also just to kind of respect them. That was a big part of it as well, like acknowledge them, don't throw them away, they're there for a purpose. So that was like one element of it. And then there's a bit about stress tolerance, which is basically when your emotions are as high and as intense as they are for people with BPD, it's the way I've explained it to other people, it's almost like you're in a burning building, so of course you're going to jump out the window. So it's the intensity of the scenario leads you to things that aren't what normal people might want to do in a scenario, if that makes sense. And they can lead you to do things that are harmful for yourself, and that's one of the main reasons why people with BPD kind of come into therapy is because they're hurting themselves or are addicted to drugs or addicted to alcohol or have overspent or have promiscuous sex. Lots of things that are really damaging for your life that are caused by this like great pain, basically. And an unendurable level of an emotion, a level that is so high you have to get out using whatever tools you have. So there's another module where you're basically just working on like how do you survive those minutes without hurting yourself. And the things in there, I've done some of them in my crisis survival tips, but there's some things in there like the tip skill, which is one that uses your physical body and your body's physical reactions to try and reset your state. So like one of them is it's called the dive reflex, and you have to submerge yourself in ice water, your face, not your whole self, but your kind of top of your head, to make your body kind of go, oh my goodness, we're in the sea, we're gonna drown, and it gives messages down to kind of relax what's going on emotionally. So when I want to make it clear that when you talk about BPD or EUPD, you're not just talking about being really sad, you're talking about being really sad to the point where it's completely uncontrollable and unlivable, which I think is a difference. I think it's not to discredit people who feel sad at all, but it's just trying to understand why that's such a problematic thing for people with BPD. So that was another one of the modules. And then the last one was one I found really challenging, but it was like basically interpersonal skills. And the reason why they do this as a module is because lots and lots of people with BPD find that the thing that triggers them the most, the thing that most often send them to hospital is relationships, relationship breakdowns, disappointments, basically anything to do with other people. And people with BPD can quite often have like a deflated sense of their own identity and their own self-worth. And so interpersonal effectiveness is learning about like how to get on with people, but also how to say no to people. And I did find that really challenging. Definitely the times I've been most unwell are linked to romantic relationships. I know that the breakdown of a romantic relationship is my biggest trigger in terms of my mental health. Bit of a sad one because there's absolutely nothing you can do to stop that really. But I know that, and I think the skills we learn in interpersonal effectiveness are really helpful for understanding that, managing it and coping ahead. So if the worst happens, then what? And it gives you something to hold on to. And the reason I wanted to kind of make this video and talk about DBT and talk about BPD and talk about a little bit about the journey is because it can be such a dark place in the middle of BPD. And I don't think I'm post BPD, I think that would be a bit naive. But I have had so much success using DBT. I feel that I genuinely don't think I've ever felt mentally better in the whole of my life. And my family said that as well. My younger brother, who I live with, has said he thinks I'm as well as I have been since I was about 7 or 8. And to be honest, that's my whole adult life. It's the majority of my life that I've not been very well. And it is just amazing, and I just want to share with you guys that when you find the thing that is right for you, whether you have BPD or something else, it really can get better. And the other reason I wanted to make this is because so many people who have BPD and so many people who treat people with BPD see it as such a frustrating condition. People tend to find that you get better for a while, but because you haven't really fixed the thing that's underneath, it goes back. And I can understand and empathise as to why therapists find that really frustrating. They're saying, you know, I've been working with this person for the past 16 weeks and they seem to be doing really well, and now they're just doing rubbish again and they just don't care and they can't be bothered. And I think that's a lot of the feeling towards people who've been in treatment for a long time. And I think it can be really sad, and like I don't want to knock clinicians. I don't think it's clinicians' problem, if that makes sense. I think it's lack of understanding and trying to care but not really having the tools to care properly. So I kind of wanted to share that too, that if you are someone who knows someone with BPD, either that they're someone in your life or they're someone that maybe you look after, it's not an intentional thing to get worse after you've gotten better. It's because you've still got this foundation. It's like treating BPD can sometimes be like you have a house that's falling down, and the reason the house is falling down is because the foundation's cracked and the foundation has holes, so the house can't keep stable by itself. And lots of the time when people treat BPD, they only see the house, so they see this house that's wonky or falling apart or crumbling in on itself, and there's efforts to prop that up, or there's efforts to replace bits and make it better. But the problem is, because this foundation is still cracked and lined, it just takes the earth to move again, and the house will crumble down again. And I think when you see the house and you don't see the foundations, I can imagine it's incredibly frustrating. It's frustrating for people who have it too, to kind of think, you know, is there something wrong with me? Am I always going to be this way? I think a lot of people in my group, and me included, kind of thought, well, this is it, I'm kind of broken, and this is just my life, and I hold together the bits I can try to hold on to at any one time. But I wanted to make it partly because it's been a huge journey for me. I finished DBT like a month ago, but I did it for a year and 3 months, every single week for 2.5 hours, and it's hard. It's really hard work, but it's worth it. I think if you're in DBT and you're unsure, work your arse off, because you have to. And it's hard, and it hurts, and it's impossible when you first start, because you're being asked to do things that you've always thought were impossible. But over time it gets so much easier, and you start to actually understand what they're asking you to do. And I just thought it would be quite a hopeful thing to share. And just kind of as a final thought before I go is, I don't know that I will ever be completely and utterly better. I still think that what I have is something that will be there for my whole life. But what I do think is that if I have the skills to manage it, and I keep using those skills, and I keep doing the same that I have, I will continue to be at a place where really it doesn't have that big of an effect on my life day to day, which is more than I'd ever hoped for. And I think that's about as good as a cure for anything that I could want. Yeah, hopefully this has been interesting. I know it's something a little bit different, and I've been wanting to make it for a while, but I just wasn't sure about the right day or time or how to talk about it, and I've ended up just running on. But I think I've shared the bits that are important to me. If you are someone who's going through this, then so much love to you, or someone who's suffering from mental illness and trying to find the right treatment option. It's really hard, or meds. Just lots of love, because you need it, and you're lovely, and just, yeah. I know that you will do better than you think you can, because someone told me something, and I think this is really important, and I will say it back to you. That someone told me that when you're not very well, especially when you're not very well with mental health for a long period of time, someone holds your hope, and someone has to keep hold of your hope. And when you don't hope, when you think it's all rubbish, it's not going to go anywhere, I can't see this getting better, these people have your hope. So I'm holding on to some of your hope today. And I think that's really important, and you'll know what I mean if you've gone through that process, that sometimes other people hold your hope for you until you're ready to have it back. I love you guys so much. Bye.